Hey, Circle Youth, we're starting a brand new series this month. But before we jump into it, I want to ask you a question. What's one rule that you hate to follow and why? Well, we want to hear your perspectives, and I encourage you to elaborate so that we can hear your honest opinions. So go ahead. What's one rule that you hate to follow and why? Discuss in your groups, and we'll be right back. There are tons of rules we need to abide by on a daily basis. For as long as human civilization has existed, there have been rules and people who have wanted to break those rules. If you've ever wanted to rebel against a rule, well, you're not alone. We all get the urge to rebel against rules that we feel restrict our freedom. There are plenty of rules we probably don't want to follow, but we can't exactly throw tantrums when we don't get what we want, can we? And everyone responds to rules differently. You might push back on almost every rule just because you can. Or maybe you might find it easy to obey most rules. After all, they must be rules for a reason, right? But no matter how you deal with rules, at some point, you're going to face a rule that you really don't like. A rule that makes you feel caged. Have you ever felt caged by a rule? Like that rule was restricting your freedom? Maybe it was, a curfew, a dress code, who you were allowed to hang out with, or maybe who you were allowed to date, your phone restrictions, or maybe it was something that God said to do, or maybe said not to do. One of the most frustrating things about being a teenager is that, you often feel stuck between childhood and adulthood. Dependence and independence, rules and freedom. You might think you're ready for more freedom, but there are still a lot of rules, and adults, you have to obey in the meantime. So what do we do about the rules we don't want to follow? How do we handle our frustration about not being as free as we want to be? And if we look to the Bible for help, is it just going to tell us to obey? Right? End of discussion. When some people think about God, they think about a list of rules like a mile long that don't feel important or relevant to their lives. And you know what? I get that. I do. Especially during the teenage years when we're fighting for freedom and independence. And you know what? God can seem like just another person telling us what to do. This is James. He's written a book in the Bible that has a lot to say about rules. And he has a very famous brother, Jesus. You see, after Jesus rose from the dead, James dove headfirst into spreading the good news of Jesus. He even became the leader of the church in Jerusalem. It was a faith community made up of Jewish people who began to follow his brother, Jesus. You see, James grew up in a Jewish culture with a lot of religious rules. There were obvious rules like, hey, don't kill anybody. But there were hundreds of other rules too, like don't wear clothes made of more than one kind of fabric. I'd be in trouble. If you find an ox on the side of the road, stop what you're doing and take it back to its owner immediately. And you know what? Say goodbye to eating bacon or shrimp. Those foods are considered unclean. Now, maybe it seems weird that God would give all of these rules, but they had a purpose. Some rules kept the Jewish people safe and healthy. Others set them apart from other nations. And others taught them how to live peacefully with each other. And many rules helped them connect also with God. You see, these rules served a purpose, but after Jesus showed up, the Jewish people who followed Jesus began to realize that things had changed because Jesus had made things right between them and God. They weren't required to follow all of these different rules anymore. Or were they? So James wrote a letter to help explain. So let's break this down real quick. James says this. He says, when we follow God's rules, we see ourselves more clearly. And following those rules actually gives us more freedom. What? How is that possible? I mean, don't laws keep you trapped and controlled? How can a law set you free? Now, that's something that I want you to discuss in your group. Do you believe that rules can actually give us more freedom? How is that possible? So go ahead, discuss in your group, and we'll be right back. Well, the law that James is talking about is not the list of hundreds of laws that the Jewish people had followed for so long. Here's what Jesus had to say about God's rules. He says, there are two that matter the most. Love God and love others as you love yourself. And that's it. When Jesus said all the law hangs on these two commandments, he was saying, look, if you're truly loving God and others, you're already following God's law. And the religious leaders at the time believed that you have to follow, hundreds or thousands of rules in order for God to love and accept you. But Jesus came to free us from that. And under Jesus' new law, the law of love, two things changed. So we learned we don't have to do anything in order to earn or keep God's love for us. We're already loved. We learned that we don't have to follow thousands of other rules if we just follow one. Love. I get it. Rules can make us feel like we've lost our freedom, but the right rules are like keys, not cages. Jesus' rule is the rule of love, and that rule sets us free. God isn't about giving us rules that keep us feeling like prisoners. That's not the point. The rules God gives are designed to set us free. Free from trying to earn God's love. Free from trying to be perfect. Free from trying to follow a long list of rules. Free to love and be loved by the God who made us. The key to our freedom is the rule of love. When we follow it, we discover that the right rules can set you free. Would God still love you if you did whatever you wanted? Yes. Yes, he would. But by doing whatever you wanted, would you be loving God and others? And to that, I say no. So over the next few weeks, we're going to talk a lot about the relationship between rules and freedoms. But we need to start here with the law of love. Because you see, God's laws set us free to love God, others, and ourselves. God's laws help us see that no matter what we've done, God's love for us never fails. Now, although there will always be rules that we don't like, including myself, rules that we don't understand or don't agree with, what we need to know is that the right rules can set you free. And according to Jesus, the greatest rule is love. We'll see you guys next week.